Stephen Yanni here doing the junkyard crawl at One Stop Towing in Brimfield, Massachusetts. This is a 1986 Merkur XR4Ti. Now the question is, what do this and the 2004-2006 Pontiac GTO have in common? Bob Lutz. Bob Lutz, if you didn't know, was and is a dynamic Detroit auto executive who spent time at General Motors, Chrysler, and yes, Ford during his storied career. Bob Lutz was behind the Viper, the GTO revival, and yes, the Merkur. Now the Merkur, these were built between 85 and about 1990, and these essentially were the Ford Sierra, a German-built Ford that was anglicized for the U.S. market. In fact, this car was featured on the cover of Motor Trend September 1984 when the Merkur first made its mark. And what Ford was trying to go for, or Mercury I should say, was a slice of the BMW marketplace. So these were not entry-level cars, but they also introduced the aero styling that was also seen on the Thunderbird, the Taurus, and you start to see body-colored faces with no grille openings, and that's kind of what we have here. This here, we can see right here, the grille comes off on this puppy, but Merkur right there, it says here, Ford Work AG, Germany. And indeed, Merkur is German for Mercury. And yes, these were sold at Lincoln Mercury dealerships, and then some Ford dealers too, but largely these were considered to be upscale vehicles. So again, Lincoln Mercury dealers where you usually would find these things. Now here's the thing. In England, the Ford Sierra had a V6 engine, a 2.8 liter engine. These don't have V6s. These have a turbocharged inline 4. And to fit that, Merkur XR4Ti only has this special domed hood. In Europe, the Sierra has a flat hood. So that's one of many things that made the XR4Ti Merkur unique to the American market. But under the hood, we'll see something here very familiar to owners of SVO Mustangs. And here it is here. This is the 2.3 liter turbocharged overhead cam Ford 4. Now this same engine at the same time, 1985, was also installed in something called the Ford Mustang GT Turbo and the first Thunderbird Turbo Coupe. Now those could be had later with intercoolers and as much as 215 horsepower. Oddly, the Merkur XR4Ti was never available with an intercooler. So these were limited to 175 horsepower, or in the case of automatic equipped cars like this one, 145 horsepower. They did that by limiting boost to 9 pounds on the automatic cars versus 14 pounds on the 5-speed manual cars. Looking closer, we'll see inside this one. Let's come on around. We'll trade places. You go on by me if you want. And again, this is an automatic, so we see the center console with that automatic transmission. Now that's a Ford C3 automatic transmission, not an overdrive. Kind of a weird deal. Mid-80s overdrive transmissions, manual and automatic, were coming on strong, but not in the XR4Ti. We also see the speedometer in this thing reads to 85 ludicrous miles per hour. But notice how all that red line right there, yeah, you can go right up to about 130 in this thing. So again, the 85 mile an hour speedometer was something we saw in this country from about 1980 through about 1988. And this is, of course, one of the last cars with that. Now, this is not a front-wheel drive car. This is a rear-wheel drive car, and the rear wheels, of course, spin when you dump that clutch or hit that gas and the boost comes on. Behind there, you'll see a drum brake, but this is not the Ford Mustang rear axle. This is actually a specific independent rear suspension on the XR4Ti with 10-inch drum brakes, which are a full inch larger than the Ford Mustang axle. So similar, but not the same stuff. And at the back of the Merkur XR4Ti for 1985, 86, and 87 is this crazy, oddball World War I airplane bi-wing. Mind you, of the Fokker biplanes of World War I, the Red Baron, but this was known as the biplane rear spoiler. And again, this was developed in a wind tunnel for sure, and it's something that was seen only on the XR4Ti. Now here's the thing, in 88 and 89, the last 2 years for the XR4Ti, this was modified to a more simple single-piece unit. But back in the 80s, if you saw this on the back of a mid-sized Mercury vehicle, it was specifically an XR4Ti. Now, this is one of those wings in automobile history that's almost as significant as the Dodge Daytona or Plymouth Superbird of 1969 and 70, or the GTO Judge with its wing. So this, to Mercury and Ford people, is the sign of the XR4Ti. Now, speaking of which, here we have it here, XR4Ti. What does this all mean? Well, T is turbocharged, I is injected. Again, not intercooled. No intercoolers on these things. And again, the Thunderbird Turbo Coupe, same time, could be had with the same engine, but with an intercooler that bumped it up, another 40 horsepower, 50 horsepower. And again, this one being an automatic has 145 horsepower, not 175. Now, the bumpers on these are also larger for the American market to suit our needs and our mandates. The bumpers on these things are quite a bit thicker and heavier. And there's something like 850 individual things that were changed between the Ford Sierra of Europe and the XR4Ti Merkur for us. Another detail that was changed was the doors. Structurally the same appearance-wise, but inside are major crash beams, which of course were part of the American side impact legislation. One cool detail on this XR4Ti is the sunroof. It's translucent, it's tinted, but check this out. Unlike modern cars where this would be power operated with a button, well, not here. There's a crank inside, and it's kind of a dual mode affair. If you turn the crank in this direction, it opens as a vent. But if you turn it the other way, I guess this would be clockwise, it retracts into the roof like that. And again, you're going to get a workout with this car. That's about 15 turns to get that thing to totally work. And take a peek up top, I'll close it up. But that's kind of neat, you know, manual override on these things. And if you didn't want the sun coming in, there is a sunscreen, this little guy right here that pulls and helps to keep you from getting sunburned if you didn't want that. So again, this is, you know, this was a premium Lincoln Mercury offering, 1985 through 89. I believe something like, maybe 12,000 of these per year were sold. It was not a huge success. These are kind of collectible, and again, a rear-wheel drive turbocharged Mercury muscle car, mid-80s. This is about as good as things got. For my 10 cents, I probably would have taken a Thunderbird Turbo Coupe, which could be had with a 5-speed manual, and the same basic formula, Turbo 4 intercooled, rear-wheel drive. But again, this is an example of, well, how far we've come since the 1980s, when Detroit was just beginning to refeel its strength as a muscle car manufacturer. But again, Bob Lutz, you can thank him for the 04 through 06 GTO, and the Merkur XR4Ti. Now, if you like this video, be sure to stay tuned to the Steve Benanti YouTube channel or subscribe.